And then finally I said, well, if it's like this one, why not this one? And I said, hang on a second. And so then I contacted Peter Jackson. I said, can we use the sword?
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Viggo, I'm gonna start with you. Obviously, you grew up as a kid in the 60s going to see Westerns on the big screen. So thinking about those experiences, I was wondering if you could imagine sitting in a movie theater and showing this film to Sergio Leone or John Ford or Howard Hawks or John Sturges, and then ask them, what did you think about how I did this? What is an aspect of this film you would love to get the thoughts of the great Western filmmakers of the era that you grew up watching?
Yeah, well, it'd be cool to do that. I mean, the first movie I directed, Falling, which is not a Western. There are a couple of horses in the story, but you don't see them for too long. That was a movie that was ready to come out in 2020. And almost everywhere, movie theaters were closed. So I was frustrated. I wanted to see how it worked, just what you're saying. People who know how to make movies, what did I do right, what can I do better, so forth. And so I contacted directors that I knew and some that I didn't. I didn't know if they would reply, men and women who were really good directors. And I said, would you like to see a link of my movie? You're probably stuck at home just like I am these days with the lockdown. And they said yes. And that was helpful. It made me think, okay, that worked, and maybe this I could have done better and the next time and so forth. And one of those directors was Peter Bogdanovich. And he liked that movie, and we ended up talking a lot, among other things, about Westerns. And I was in the process of writing this story. And he had famously, he was someone before directing movies. He was interviewing directors. He wrote as a journalist, wrote about movies. And he got to know Howard Hawks and John Ford, and he told me lots of stories about them. So that was really instructive. This one, I don't know. I mean, there's been a couple of, very happy about those. There was a couple of quotes from some critics. One who said, Howard Hawks and John Ford would love this movie. That was a quote that was in a review, and I thought, wow, well, how do you know that? I don't know if they have a movie theater where those guys are now. Hopefully up there somewhere.
I would have a question for them.
Yeah, what would you ask
I would ask them, so now after seeing our film, do you regret not having more female heroes in your film?
That's a perfect segue into my question for you, Vicky, because one of the things that I love about this film is that Vivian is the type of character who normally in the past, the camera cuts away from her. I mean, other than maybe Hired Hand, I feel like past Westerns often cut away from a character like Vivian to follow the male characters. This movie stays with her. So I'm sort of curious, since this is so fresh and new, is there anything that you learned from past Westerns, considering it's a genre that historically didn't always give as much focus and attention to female characters?
I mean, I watched a lot of Westerns, just also for my own pleasure and because I like them, and I love the genre for the landscape, for the beauty of the landscape and people trying to survive. You know, this is like the ancient Greek tragedy or somehow. But I didn't try for my character to think of other Western characters so much. I really tried to make her modern, because for me, the reason to make her, I mean, not the reason, but one of the reasons why you would make a Western today, and this is what I read in the script, is, you know, the parallel of our world today. We are also living in a very difficult world where we kill our neighbors because of the land, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was interesting to me to think, like, if she was someone from today, how would she survive in that time? Probably pretty similarly. And I really tried to make it personal. It was very personal for me.
It's beautifully done. Viggo, now that you have so much experience as a director, you know what it means, what it takes to look through that lens and to craft a moment and tell a story. I'm sort of curious, if you'll indulge me, what is a scene from a movie that you're in that you didn't direct, that you would have loved to have been behind the camera for, just to know what it felt like to have directed that moment?
Oh, lots of them. But I wouldn't mention any movie or any director, because by implication, I'd be saying maybe I would do it better or something like that, and I don't know if that's true. I would just be different. I've been lucky. I mean, I've worked with really good directors, whether it's Jane Campion or Cronenberg or Ron Howard or Lisandro Alonso, and I mean all kinds of women and men from different countries who make very different kinds of stories, but most of them have been really skillful at preparing and working together with people and telling stories, telling exactly the story they wanted to tell. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the thing I learned the most about is hearing from you what you think about the movie, obviously, but especially audiences. When we talk to them, when they've just finished seeing the movie, they don't have necessarily any axe to grind or any, they're just honestly saying what they think right then. Maybe they'll change their mind, maybe they won't, but so you really get an honest gauge of what it is. And interestingly enough, even though I tried to make a classic Western with some differences, obviously, in it in terms of the characters, there's been several people who have said, in a polite way, but they say, well, I don't like Westerns, or I don't usually go see Westerns, but I like this movie. And I'm like, well, that's good. That's positive for us and for Westerns, maybe.
I was wondering if you'll indulge me one nerdy question, because for fans of Lord of the Rings, there is an incredible cameo in this film that people will miss if you just don't know it's there, and it's within the first 5 seconds. I would love to hear the story of how your sword ended up in this film.
It wasn't a gimmick. It wasn't like, let's hide something, and see if somebody sees it. It was just practical. We were getting this character together. We found this beautiful black horse, very spirited, the right kind of saddle. We made this blanket that was right for this medieval knight, and the headstall and the helmet for the knight, and his clothes. Everything was just right. I said, but he needs a sword if he's a knight, and a lance. So we got the lance. That was great. But where's the sword? And they showed me some swords that we could maybe use, and I thought, they're okay. They're not great. Could be more like this, and I showed him, a picture of that one. There was one I used in Lord of the Rings, and then finally I said, well, if it's like this one, why not this one? And I said, hang on a second, and so then I contacted Peter Jackson. I said, can we use the sword, or do we have to pay, or are we allowed? And he said, well, is it like one of the main characters in the story? I said, no, you might see it for like a few seconds, if you even notice it. But there'll always be somebody. There'll be somebody in the audience every time that will spot this, because people who like Lord of the Rings, they don't miss anything, and any detail. And he said, well, it's fine with me, you don't have to worry about it, but ask the movie company. So I asked them, they asked me the same thing, is it really important? I said, well, it's important to this knight, he needs his sword, but you see it for a few seconds and that's it. But somebody will see it. Okay, it's okay, you don't have to pay, it's fine. So that's
it was funny when I was on the horse.
Oh yeah, this is great.
Because I had a coach who was teaching me the accent, the Quebecois accent. And he was there every day, and one day I'm on the horse, because we both are, and I'm sitting there, and I'm not thinking about this, because I'm not this kind of nerd. I mean, I know the film, but I would never, anyway. I'm sitting there concentrating.
You didn't know it was the sword from the
No, I would never even care, to be honest. Anyway, so I'm sitting there and I'm very concentrated in the woods, and it's dangerous and it's getting dark and everything. And suddenly he comes running up to me, like really, really like this, very excited. Can I touch it? And I think, what?
Touch what?
Touch what? What are you talking about? It's the sword, it's the thing, what sword, what is it? And then he told me, it's the sword of the Lord of the Rings, and I had no idea what he wants.
Just when I thought I couldn't love this movie anymore. Guys, seriously, I've got 10,000 more questions for you, but thank you for crafting such an incredible, beautiful film. It's always a good time when I have questions left over. But seriously, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for making this movie. And I hope I get to speak with you guys again, because seriously, you guys are incredible. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day, guys. See you later.
You too.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.